Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining me this week for this topic of money. I'm real excited to dig into this. I think this is something that women should be talking about a whole lot more, and so I'm excited to hear your experiences and your advice and tips for women. So, why don't you start us off with sharing a little bit about how you got interested in the topic of money?
Thank you for having me. I love talking about money. And I think it's such a, like you said, it's such a topic that we as women can talk about more and really get to have a better relationship with it.
Yeah.
So the short answer probably is, I, in my childhood, right? I saw the experience that my father has been always been an entrepreneur himself, and I saw the experience that we had of having money and then not having money, and
Mm,
then going back and having money. And so recognizing kind of like that dichotomy or that duality of like, oh wow, like you do have a lot of choice and freedom and things when you do have money,
hmm
and then also recognizing, and it doesn't have to be this way, but in my household it was, is like, and when we didn't have money there was lots of conflict.
mm,
There was also conflict when there was money, so I should
sure.
say. So just recognizing like, how this relationship, like I saw what we could use money for, like such a tool and things of that sort. And
hmm
then also feeling like, oh wow, but like people fight when there's not money or not enough, or the
Yeah,
perceived of not enough.
right.
And so I always came from a place of like, okay, I'm going to educate myself. And I didn't recognize this at 10 years old, right? The body
Yeah,
doesn't do this.
yeah.
But as I grew up, like, okay, I want to, it was almost like a running away from energy. Like, I never want to be in that position. So I'm
hmm
going to educate myself. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to take classes. I ended up becoming a financial planner,
hmm
and so really coming from that scared, lack, fear based
mm
place of like, I want to save. And it was almost like hoarding. So I never had to be in that position.
hmm
And then it wasn't until I took time off that I recognized, oh, wow, like, I'm not moving from the energy of love and joy and abundance with money. It's
Yeah.
coming from, I never want to be like that. I'm so scared. And so,
Mm.
really, over the last 6-ish years, has been really transforming my own relationship with money from one of like fear and panic and scarcity mindset to one
hmm
of more like sufficiency, abundance, joy, fun, things of that sort.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting about conflict. I know my husband and I did the Dave Ramsey plan, and we talked a lot about in that like kind of practice about conflict and communication, and that was a really big part of it. And so I chuckled a little bit when you're like, "There's conflict when you don't have money." Oh, there's conflict when you do have money. Yeah, there sure is. It's money brings out the conflict in us. So I chuckled at that a little bit,
Yeah.
but. Yeah. Well, so Erin, I know you've shared with me that women don't have great relationships with money necessarily. And so I'm curious, why is it imperative that women start reframing their relationship with money?
Yeah. And I don't want to make a blanket statement like, women don't have, like, most of the clients that come to me, they have a more stressful, uneasy, not fun and joyful relationship with money. I mean, there are
Sure.
plenty of women out there, that do have an amazing relationship with money. And I think more of those women, we need to be talking about that so that we
Yeah.
can see, like, hey, that's an option too. Um, and so I think that it's important for women to, if you're willing, right, to change your relationship with money, because I think money impacts every area of our life. And I
hmm
think money is just a mirror into who we actually are as well.
hmm
So when you're doing money work, you're really doing, soul, good old soul work, right?
Yeah.
If you were to look at like, what did I think about my money, years ago, it was like, it's not enough. um it was all around not enough, basically,
Yeah.
not good enough, not enough. And that's what I thought of myself. And so once I started changing my relationship with myself and obviously with my money, like that, it kind of bled into that as well.
hmm
And intentionally doing, wealth consciousness work. But I think for a lot of women, I think we just do money so differently, and we do relationships so differently. And I think
hmm
for those of us that do have kids and want to, like, we talk a lot about in the financial planning world of like our legacy.
hmm
But I think one of our biggest legacies is to empower our children. Like, we talk about generational wealth,
Yeah.
but generational wealth, I think, is for us to have an amazing relationship with money and to teach that to our children, because
hmm
that is like that, then they can learn how to generate it for themselves. You have that wealth consciousness versus let me just create a lot of money, have a lot of money, and pass it down to my children.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for women, changing their relationship with money, I think it impacts future generations. I think it impacts how we do business. It impacts how we do our community, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, in all areas. And so I think more women could use a lot of money, have a better relationship with it. And we can really, I always say, like, we could literally change the world when
Mm-hmm.
we change our relationship, because we're changing the relationship that we have with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about money as part of the community, right? Like this podcast is about like creating a community. I mean, literally, I say creating a community of women, and so that I hadn't thought about that kind of angle of community, and I think that that's a really cool opportunity to think about it a little bit differently and thinking about money and how we spend it, use it, or in relation with it. So that's giving me something to pause and think about. So.
Yeah.
Thanks for
I
that.
mean, I think, like you said, we think a lot about like community as togetherness, but like, what can we do? Like I have several friends that have nonprofits, and I think business also is another like beautiful way to, infuse our money because you get to hire and you get to
Yeah.
change people's lives by who you hire. And, it just is a trickle down effect. But like you said, we look at community just as a togetherness versus like, what can we do when we get to use our money together? And
Mm-hmm.
like think of it from that energetic piece of like
Mm-hmm.
vast amounts of money moving in different areas. I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Well, obviously, it's important to do money work, and so I'm curious to hear, kind of your why behind doing money work.
I think it's the same, as the first question. Like when you ask, like, how did you get into money?
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're all born, first of all, we're all born whole, worthy, deserving, and lovable. And then somewhere along the way, right, someone told us or something happened, and then we took that internally to think that we weren't.
Yeah.
And so, if we can get back to that place, which we can, and we do have desires. I was just having the conversation with my child, and she was like, well, sometimes I don't want to ask you because you tell me no. And I'm like, you also have to look at how often I tell you yes, right? And just
Mm-hmm.
because I tell you no doesn't mean you can't have it. It just means I might not pay for it, but you can
Mm-hmm.
still receive it in another way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so important that when we change, we do this money work, it's almost like we get to a lot of women I meet, like we're not dreaming anymore. We have
Mm-hmm.
like almost made our thinking so small because of maybe what who we were around or where we grew up or societal or school or whatever. And so like really dreaming big again, and in order to do that, right, we have to change our wealth consciousness. We have to change what we think about ourselves, what we believe that we are worthy of having
Mm-hmm.
and deserving of having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really powerful. I have two little humans, girl humans, right? And so all of this I'm thinking about not only for myself as I hear you sharing some of these things, I'm also like, and what about them? Like how am I helping them fortify their future around money and their relationship with money too. So I appreciate you bringing in the little human piece of it, right? Because I think that that's a really powerful part of it's not only just about us, it's about them as well, as we think about that money piece.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like I don't know what age you are, but my grandfather was literally part of the Great Depression, right? And so
Mhm.
I and not to say that if you were part of the Great Depression you're going to have the same experience I had, right? That's
Right.
not true. There's lots of people that made a lot of money during the Great Depression, and also I do know people that have that same poverty conscious mentality because they were raised by someone, right? My dad was raised by someone who was in the Great Depression, right? And
Yeah.
so if we here we go back to, I don't know if this is your first or second question, but like if we as moms don't stop, draw that line in the sand, like we're going to do money
Mhm.
differently. We're going to, let it be a source of an empowerment and love and a tool for our children. Like it just continues on. And so
Mhm.
I don't like the word obligation, but I just think we have such a amazing opportunity to help our little humans
Mhm.
completely have. And I mean, here we go back to they came into the world completely,
Yeah.
abundant, right? We change all of that within them. So if
Yeah.
we can minimize that infusion of
Mhm.
that scarcity mentality, I think it's an amazing thing to do for our children.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Really cool. Really cool. So if my listeners are nodding along here and they're like, yeah, I'm in. Where do I start? What kind of tips do you have for them, Erin, as they're starting to think about their relationship with money?
I think the first thing, like anything, starts with awareness.
Hmm.
And I think also as women, we don't celebrate enough. We always are looking to, oh, look how far we have to go, right?
Sure.
Versus how far have we come. So, like, anytime you notice something, like, celebrate it. Like, oh, wow. Like, because you cannot change what you do not know or are aware of. So,
Hmm.
starting with, I would say, like, over the next week, just start with, let me just notice how often I think about money. Like, I like did that the first time and I'm like, I'm so tired of thinking about money in like the first 2 hours that I get my little notebook. I'm like, I'm so done with this. So, just notice how often do you feel, think about money, and then what do you feel in your body? This is where we actually take it into the like, there's the thought and the mindset piece of it, but like in your body, when your kid asks you for something that's above your dollar amount threshold, how do
Hmm.
you feel in your body? When you're thinking of investing in your business, what do you feel in your body? When you're spending and circulating and investing money, what do you feel in your body? So just
Hmm.
notice what that is for the next week and write that down. Like, you could write down, 10 to 15, like, and you will start to see what are your main threads or belief systems.
Hmm.
And then you can start then to think, okay, what do I want to think and feel about money? Because we get to feel any way we want to about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in the personal development world, we go where we think, you're going to go from lack and scarcity mindset and just change these overnight, right? I think that feels very pressure, So
Mm-hmm.
really just easing into it and being like, okay, well, what do I want to? Like, am I in possibility? Like, do I even believe that this is possible? And
Hmm.
start playing with that. And like, where do I want? What kind of relationship do I want to have with money? And
Hmm.
then think of it from the end perspective. So if I was already abundant, if I was already believed that I was completely had everything that I could ever want, how would I be feeling and thinking and acting from where I am right now? Right.
Hmm.
And so starting to make those, and I would say start small, right? Like, what are some small decisions? Are you not taking you mentioned Dave Ramsey.
Hmm.
And sometimes clients have come to me and they're like, Erin, I don't want to be so restrictive. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be restrictive, right?
Right.
And so and so are you not taking yourself out for a latte because you're like, oh, it's too expensive? Like, is that something that feels really fun to you? Are you, like, so what are some things that you
Yeah.
can start doing for yourself that are just on the small scale that you get to see, like, oh, this is where I am, suppressing or not taking care of myself
Yeah.
because I'm making money more important than me. And
Hmm.
then I would say start there.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. I think that I talk a lot on my podcast about like being self-aware, being mindful, and then like kind of this sense of feeling as you're talking
Yeah.
about, right? And so I love that it's translating into this topic as well. It's not one that I talk a lot about on my podcast, but I think it's super important. And well, because I don't have experts like Erin, to talk about money. And so I think it's really important, but I like that it kind of translate with this, like you've got to kind of understand where you're at and feel and be mindful about the way that you're interacting with, engaging, and thinking. I really like the thinking part of it, right? Like I think about money a lot too, and I sometimes get tired of thinking about money, so I resonate.
Yeah.
I resonate with that a lot. So, yeah, I really like that.
And I think also too for a lot of women, I don't know if you have experienced this, but like we don't actually feel safe with money. And
Mm,
so when you feel like or you think money or you view it as a perceived threat, we are not going to get more of it. I mean, think of it as someone that you are fearful of to be around, right? Like you're not
mm,
going to want to do anything that has to do that because that person does not feel safe to you. So it's the
yeah.
same way we've got to get to the place of like where money is feels safe.
Hmm.
And here you go back to what you were saying, like in the body, right? Like
Hmm.
and I think sometimes going from scarcity to abundance is way too big of a jump, but like sufficiency and neutrality, like, okay, I'm just not triggered like I used to be.
Yeah.
That is huge step for a lot of women because they have come so far from, like scarce and fearful and panic, all of those like very
Hmm.
terrorizing emotions.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's really real. I think it's interesting too, like the dichotomy between men and women, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the perception, or at least my perception is that men are more comfortable with money, talking about money, being around money, asking for money, right? All those sorts of things, and women just aren't, as you have indicated. And so, obviously, it's an important topic for women to be talking about. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of why women should be doing this work?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said. I mean, we've homeschooled our child for most of her um, what primary school education. And so she has gone to a couple of schools, and so she's in school now because she wanted to go, and
Hmm.
I said she's learning or was doing a play in Shakespeare. And I think all of these things have their place.
Hmm.
But also, where are we learning about money? I'm like, I asked her teacher, I'm like, are you
Hmm.
talking about money? Are you talking about some of these like emotional regulation? Of course, that's what I'm going to ask her. But,
Right.
it's like some of this stuff, like that stuff is important. Like we're building life skills. And I don't think two things. One, I think they were intentionally withheld from us through our schooling because
Hmm.
it is a way to control and to overpower people, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you don't know how to do money, if you don't feel safe with money, it's very easy to control people from
Hmm.
that place.
Hmm.
Number two is that like when we are some of these skills that we are building is lifelong skills, and it's not a problem that you don't know it, right? Like I think so many women think that they have to be air quotes smart with, they
Yeah.
have stories around math, they have stories around, I wasn't taught money, but like if you know how to learn, if you know how to ride a bike, or if you like think about anything that you have learned to
Hmm.
do, like we can learn to do this.
Hmm.
And I would ask or question, like, why do you not want to? Like, if you're like,
Hmm.
I don't have a good reason why we wouldn't want to learn about money, right? Because it
Right.
really impacts every single area of our life. And
Hmm.
I think that the more that we learn, the more we increase our knowledge, the more that we are competent, the more that we get to ask questions. I mean, and there's so much information now, with YouTube or internet or just podcasts, like there's so much information that you can just, even just the little bit of that little opening for you to be like, huh, didn't know about that. Let me go do some research on that. Like
Hmm.
that is like these little breadcrumbs that we get to take along our path to learn more so that we can feel and become more empowered when it comes to money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that you shared a little bit about like the where do they start to learn about the money, right? And you have a podcast as well, right? That
Yes.
folks could learn as well. Give your podcast a little plug here.
Yeah, it's called Your Money, Your Rules,
Yeah.
because I really, here we go back to financial planning. I think from that financial industry, it's kind of like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to save. This is what you're supposed to. And I really have, through helping lots of women, that we all have different values and different goals in our life, right? And there's
Hmm.
no one set way you're supposed to do money. I mean, I would say the way that you do money is the way you want to do money. And I
Hmm.
want to empower more women to like, what are my values? I just was prepping for another podcast episode, and I was thinking about my budget or my allocation is geared more towards travel than it is like there's very little spending that I do on clothing. That's
Hmm.
okay. But someone else who loves to buy all the clothes,
Hmm.
that's okay too, right? And so there's no judgment there. And it's so really, really getting to like release, how am I supposed to do money and like how do I want to do it? And really dispelling this idea of like retirement, and like doing work we love,
Hmm.
just kind of, I definitely come from the lens of like, let's just cut down all of the things we've ever learned and like
Yep.
let's just rebuild money the way you want to do it,
Yeah.
and giving yourself permission to do it that way.
I love it. I love it. Well, Aaron, I'll make sure that that is included. Your podcast is included in my show notes so that folks can grab it and go check it out if they're interested in hearing a little bit more from you. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate the time you spent today talking about money. I'm definitely thinking about money differently, and I'm gonna have to learn a little bit of my own relationship with money. And so, as we wrap this episode up, I'm curious, what kind of final thoughts do you have for the listeners?
Probably you are whole and perfect. Oh, it'll make me cry. And worthy just as you are. Like wherever you are, it's just totally okay. And it's okay to want more. I think we need to have more women saying it's okay to want more.
Mm,
It's okay to want to live in a different house, or, take your kids on vacation, or pay for your, parents to do assisted living at some point. Like, it's okay to want a lot of money and have
mhm,
that. And um, I think the more that we, talk about it and without any guilt or shame, and I think, the more service that we're doing to the world.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I definitely have some takeaways, and I believe my listeners also will have some good takeaways for this
Thank you so
as
much for
well.
having me.
Yeah, of course. Listeners, thank you for continuing to tune in, and hopefully you also have some takeaways from Erin and some tips that you are going to ingrain in how in your work with money and how you perceive money and how you interact with money. So this week's affirmations, I'm done apologizing for spending time focused on me. I'm done apologizing for wanting more for myself and for what I enjoy. And this one's for you, fill in the blank. I'm done apologizing for. Friends, go out there, have an incredible week. Do the amazing things I know you're capable of. Remember to like, follow, and share wherever you're listening to this podcast episode. Hit that little subscribe button so you know when the next great podcast episode drops, which is on Mondays. If you're not already, make sure you're following on social media. I'm literally everywhere, friends. You can find me in all the mediums. So every place, every platform has some done apologizing content. And so, depending on what you're looking for, there's a couple different platforms with different opportunities. So, make sure you go find me at Done Apologizing on almost every platform. And if you want to be my guest, just like Erin and all my other incredible guests, make sure that you fill out the form at the link in my show notes or anywhere on my social media platforms. I want to hear what you're passionate about, what you think women should be talking about, and we're not. Make sure you fill out that form. We want to hear from you. And remember, you're fabulous. You're a badass. You've got this, and I'm here for you.